Welcome to the Rock the Stage Show. Each week, international media expert Rich Bontrager has in-depth and personal conversations with celebrities, top leaders, authors, speakers, and media professionals. Now, from the Rock the Stage studios, here's your host, The Trigger, Rich Bontrager.
Welcome back. Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Hi, I'm The Trigger, Rich Bontrager. And you're in for a treat once again for another episode of Rock the Stage. But before we get into our main show tonight, we do want to brag a little bit and celebrate. We're thrilled to announce the expansion of the Rock the Stage show. We are now airing on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and the Bravehearts TV network. So you have those channels, you have those networks. Please add us to your favorite channel selections. It'll be easy to click on it, find us each and every episode. So please join us as we're expanding further and further. Tonight, we are going to get into the world of media and public speaking. What do world-class speakers, TV personalities, and high-stakes boardrooms all have in common? The ability to master the microphone, to share their message. In a world where one wrong word can go viral and kill you, and one great moment can turn you into a superstar. Being media savvy isn't a bonus anymore. It's essential to succeed and thrive. Tonight, we're going to dive deep into the ever-evolving world where public speaking meets media mastery. So buckle up, everybody. Tonight, you're in for a very special, powerful episode of Media, Muscle, and Charisma. My guest tonight is a reputation expert who has been the past president of the Global Speakers Federation and is the director of MediaCoach. He's an author and journalist and both a TV presenter and expert interviewee. And his clients include politicians, TV presenters, sports stars, as well as companies like Virgin, Google, the Beverly Hills Hotel, BMW, and if I'm saying this right, Mumm Champagne. The independent newspapers listed him as one of the top 10 media experts in the UK. So welcome tonight, Alan Stevens, the media coach on Rock the Stage.
Hey, Rich, good to be with you. Thank you. What a lovely intro. I couldn't have written a better one myself. That's really great. Thank you for that.
It's really amazing when you know the craft of speaking and writing and media. You can do pretty good, can't you?
I'm in the right space, absolutely. Yeah, and it's great to be with you. It's a real pleasure. I love the show. I've watched lots of past episodes, and you do a fantastic job, my friend.
Well, thank you much. And again, we do want to thank my publicist and show wrangler, Robert Stack, the amazing Robert Stack.
Wonderful man.
He's another man that drew you into the circle, and now here you are. So you have spent your life in this arena, but I'm very interested. You built a career that intersects perfectly now with media, coaching, and public speaking.
Yes, that's
Was
right.
that an intentional plan, or was that an accidental overlap? Because the world needs this now.
Oh, you bet, Rich. No, it was never intentional. I mean, our careers and our lives are rarely intentional. I mean, the speaking part of it was. I mean, I started out on stage when I was only 14 years old. I was MC of my grandfather's music club in London, and that was what we used to call the swinging 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, I was 14 years old. He was too mean to pay a professional MC, so he kept it in the family. And I used to I think I got a couple of free orange juices and that was about it at the end of the night. But the remarkable thing was I had no idea how important the job was that I was doing. We used to have bands like The Who and The Stones.
Oh, yeah.
And Bowie, come to visit the club. And I used to introduce them on stage and look after them backstage and that kind of thing. And it was only years later that I mentioned it to somebody and he said, "You did what?" I said, "You did what?"
Is there any video footage or a photo shot of you with the Stones, right?
If only we'd had cameras in those days.
Yeah.
If only we had. I mean, I still know the guys. I still see them from time to time. But it's you would it's interesting. The first night that Bowie played Ziggy Stardust was at our venue.
Oh, really?
February '72, and there's a lot of stories about that night. Maybe another time, or maybe later on, we might talk about
either later on, or we may have you come back just a whole night on that. That's amazing. Yeah. So this whole media world has gone, and what's the best way to get media attention? Because I tease it up. You can have bad, or you can have good. They both will go viral. So what's the best way to do this?
Well, yeah, you're right. Which depends on how you look at it. I mean, one way to get media attention is to do something really stupid. And, and these days, there's always somebody with a camera. So they're going to find you and they're going to put that out there on TikTok or whatever. And it's going to be all over the world in 2 minutes. But really, if you want to get media attention, I always say to people, cultivate journalists, get to know journalists and know what they're looking for. The thing is, a lot of people will pitch stories to journalists that have never got a hope of appearing on media. Not a hope. You've got to have a hook. You've got to have relevance. You've got to have importance to the audience. You know all this stuff. But the thing is, a lot of people don't do that. They put out a press release and say, we're opening a new office in New York. And really, how about that? And they can't.
There's a million other opening up today too in New York.
Yeah. They can't understand why reporters don't beat a path to their door. And it's because it's not interesting. If they said, we're opening an office on top of a skyscraper in the open air, and we're going to invite people in, and it's going to be remarkable, it's going to be a beautiful sunny garden, you think, hang on a minute, that's quite interesting, because it's a first, it's a new, it's a local, it's a relevance, and all those kind of things. So to get media attention, I think the first thing is to think, what does a journalist want?
Yes.
Second, and what they don't want, what people often think they want, is to ask you impertinent questions. And most of them don't. I mean, it happens with politicians. Poor people, they're going to get asked the tough stuff. We're not. We're not there to be interrogated. No. We're not there to be put up against a wall and fired questions at. We're there to tell our story. And it's stories that people want. You've got a story. It's an interesting story. It's a relevant story, and you can tell it well. You will always be welcome on the media.
So as a journalist, what's one of the worst press releases or pitches or whatever that you ran into that right away you said, delete, trash, go away? What's one of the worst ones you've had?
Well, it's a funny thing, Rich. I mean, I actually teach PR people to write releases, to write media releases and press releases, because they don't seem to learn that in PR school anymore. And I think the worst one I ever saw, it was a 5-page release. And it began with 2 pages of quotes from the president of the company. Oh, wow. Now, I mean, I'm a journalist. I'm quite lazy. Journalists are lazy people. We'll read the first bit, what we call the stand first. Mm-hmm. We'll read maybe the first paragraph, probably not all of it, and then we'll think, okay, that's a goer. We'll run with that. But this guy, he'd written a speech, and then it was only at the end you realise what it was all about. And of course, no, it didn't get any publicity at all. And when I said you've got to rewrite that in 1 page, it's really, he said, I can't get all my words in 1 page. I said, well, you're not going to hear your words on television, I'm afraid. That's it.
So, and again, press releases have radically changed from the days of, you're talking about print and everything else. Are press releases still relevant today, since you brought it up? And if so, how are press releases relevant? Because the print world has shrunk and the streaming world, the media world, has taken over. Yeah, the print world has shrunk. In fact, I was talking to somebody yesterday. The print world has shrunk by about 10% of the size it was 10 years ago. It's remarkable. And we're talking about newspapers and magazines and those sorts of things. They're tiny, tiny circulations now. So now we don't talk about press releases much anymore. We talk about media releases. Yeah. And media releases will go to all sorts of media sources. They'll go to different channels. They'll often be digital. In fact, they'll nearly always be digital. They'll be emailed rather than printed out and handed out or posted or whatever it was. So they'll be digital. They'll hopefully include some video. But really, it's the targeting that's the important thing. And I think the thing that people have done wrong for years and are still doing wrong is this kind of mass delivery. We'll send out 5,000 releases. We're bound to get some coverage. If they sent 5 releases to the right 5 people, they get 5 interviews. Yes. Less is more when it is targeted.
That's right. And not only targeted, Rich, but also customized. So I always say to people, you never send out the same media release to 2 different journalists, because they've got different interests. They know, you know what they like. You know what's going to push their buttons. Right. So what I say to people, let's do 10 customized media releases to 10 high-profile journalists, which is probably going to land at least 6 or 7 interviews.
So it takes longer time and research to know what those different journalists specialize in or focus on.
Well, that's where guys like me come in, obviously, because I know all the journos, and I know what they like, and I know the hook that will make them bite.
That's why I have a guy like Robert hanging around me.
Exactly, right. Robert, just the same. And the thing is, there is no point trying to blast out loads of information.
Yes.
The target list. It won't. None of it will land. None of it at all. And people spend a lot of money and a lot of time trying to do that because they've got this conception that if you push loads of stuff out and some of it lands, it's brilliant. But it's completely the wrong way around. And the other thing that they do, they don't realize that a media release is an upside down novel. So a media release, it gives you the answer, like if it was a murder novel, who did it? It's in the first line of the media release. That's the guy. That's the guy who did it. Now, this is why he did it, and this is where he did it, and here's a bit more information. So it flips upside down the concept of most stories, where the punchline or whatever it is, the denouement comes at the end. It's got to come right at the beginning. People have a struggle.
You have to lead with it. The old line of "you buried the lead."
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, exactly that. You've got to have the most interesting statement up front. I mean, and people often fail to understand. They want to lead. The worst people are scientists. I mean, I've worked with some professors, and they're terrible. They just want to tell here's the remember the experimental method. Here's the apparatus we used. Here's the theory that we had. Here are the results. Here's the analysis of the results. And now, that's what occurs. I'll just give you a quick story if I may.
Yeah, please.
I do a course called Presenting Science to Business for a couple of universities. And a guy came in one day, and forgive me, I'm making this up, whatever. It's not a real chemical. So if you're listening or watching, don't imagine this is a real chemical. And I said to the guy, what do you do? And he said, well, I try and increase the attachment points on beta-chinoesterase. I said, do you? I said, well, how about that? I said, give me that again. He said, I try and increase the attachment points on beta-chinoesterase. I said, good man. Well done. I said, now what's the point of that? And he said, well, it's rather obvious. And I said, well, not to me. So pretend I'm a 5-year-old and just explain it to me. And he said, well, what I can do, I can make sure that people who've had a heart operation are 60% less likely to have a recurrence of heart disease if they take this particular drug, this formulation. And I said, well, that's rather good, isn't it? And he said, well, yeah, but that's obvious. I said, why don't we put that in the first line?
Yes. Yeah.
And he didn't believe me, but that's what we did. And of course, immediately, within a few days, he was on call for most of the TV shows in the UK.
There's something when you're public speaking, using media, we're afraid to give away the good stuff.
Yeah, we are.
We're like going to bury it in layers, and you might get a gleam of it. Instead of doing what you're talking about is give them the good stuff, wow them a little bit, and the phone or the TV will pop off more and more for you, right?
Absolutely. I mean, as we often say, fire all your big guns at once. That's right there. Let them have it. And then they'll come back and they'll say, oh, Dan, why did you do that? How did that work? What was all that about? Because those are the questions that journalists want to ask. You've got to hit them with the big stuff first.
Oh, and it's so much easier for everybody and so much more fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about the whole reputation thing, because you do work on that area very, very extensively, I know. In the world where reputation be made or broken, that tweet, the viral video that talks about, what core media skills do we need to have as leaders? Think about the business community, entrepreneurs. Yeah. What do we have to learn to master so we don't land on the grenade and blow up?
Well, the first thing is to recognize something's gone wrong. And it takes some people a while to realize that something's gone wrong. I mean, there are two types of crises. There are sudden crises and there are crises that develop over a period of time. Around about 75% of crises develop over a period of time. You can see them coming if you look carefully. So the sudden crisis is the unusual type of crisis. We'll come back to that in a minute. But the one that's a gradually developing crisis, what you need are monitoring devices in place. You need to know what's happening. You need to be talking to your people. You need to find out if somebody says, Chief, I think something might be going wrong here. Well, just keep an eye on that. Keep me briefed, keep me informed, so that if it does break at some point, I know how to deal with it. So that's the first thing. Monitor things, know what's going on. Second thing is always tell the truth. Really, really important. You don't have to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, but you do have to tell the truth. So what you say must be true and honest. And some people would say to me, well, look, Alan, I need to get away with this. Can you help me just cover this up a little bit?
Just massage it a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. Just lie a little bit. And I say, no. And they say, oh, don't worry. If my reputation suffers, it'll be okay. And I say, no, I'm not worried about your reputation. I'm worried about mine. I don't care. You're paying me to manage yours. I've got to manage mine. Right. So I always say, no, I will not, under any circumstances, help you to lie or cover up or anything like that. You can't. You've got to come out with your hands up.
Yeah.
So you've absolutely got to come out with your hands up, because most things that go badly wrong are because of a cover-up. And it's not the initial thing that kills you, it's the cover-up or the attempt to cover it up that kills you. You've got no end of examples. You know from your own politics, there have been any number of occasions when people have tried to cover up, and then eventually it comes out and they go, oh, yeah, so you really did do that. Well, yeah, I should have said, I suppose.
Well, all the way from Watergate going forward to
absolutely
President Trump now, it's an endless thing of, we think one more lie, one more coat of paint.
Yeah, I'll get away with it. Yeah.
And instead, it doesn't. Now, there are some people that do think the news cycle is more important than anything else, and they will intentionally say stupid things to keep the news cycle on them. Is that a good technique to use, to intentionally poke the bear, make it happen, and then you're always on?
I can give a fairly simple answer to that, which is no. It's never a good idea. I mean, it's never a good idea to go to a journalist and say something which you know is not true, because they will find out. I believe you me, they will find out at some point. Maybe not straight away, but at some point they will find out, and then you're in big trouble. Because not only have you got to answer for the initial problem, you've got to answer about why you didn't admit it or why you said something that you knew to be untrue. That's an absolute killer. So no, you should never wind up a journalist or make them mad or make them believe something that's not true. Because if you do that, it will be your downfall.
Well, and the same thing with public speakers. I mean, we embellish stories, we elongate things, we add little tweaks in there. But that's storytelling. When you blatantly lie, you will get burned as a keynote speaker.
Well, absolutely. And I often say to people, when I'm working with speakers, with professional speakers and so on, I always say, have you Google proofed your speech? Because everybody in the audience has got access to all the information in the world in the palm of their hand. So anything that you say, they'll check it immediately. Does that seem reasonable? Is that true? Let me just run that past Wikipedia or whatever their information source of choice is. I remember I was once, I was in an audience at an event, and the speaker came out and he said, it's a proven fact scientifically that optimists live 10 years longer than pessimists. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. Oh, like, yeah, we're optimists. So I'm thinking, well, another 10 years. And then I thought, that doesn't sound, really? So I Googled it. There was no evidence for it at all. No evidence for it at all. And the only study that I found, it was a study by Cornell University, and it said there's a possibility that pessimists live about 6 months longer than optimists on average. And I thought, oh, that's bad luck. But anyway, so in the Q&A at the end, I challenged the guy. And I said, where's this information from? And he said, oh, it's common knowledge. Oh, dear, really? And he said, you can check it. I said, I have checked it.
Right here.
There's no such thing. And he just got annoyed. He just, next question. That was it.
Well, and it's right in the palm of your hand now. I mean, you're live at an event, someone's speaking, and you can literally in the audience go, Google. And
that's
go,
right.
Sorry, Bob, you're wrong.
And people will. People, I've seen that happen many times. And you think, well, maybe they're on their phone checking where they're supposed to be tonight. No, they're not. They're checking what you just said.
Yes.
So be very careful.
Now, there's a lot of platforms. I mean, you've had a very long, illustrious career, but now it's not just TV. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, there's streaming platforms, there are recorded platforms, there are everything right now. So when it comes to all this growing media, the independent market, how do you coach your clients to help them adapt their message, their style, to stay authentic? Because there's so many options now. How do you?
There are, Richie. But I think what it's about tweaking. It's about making minor changes to suit the channel. I mean, for example, if you're on TikTok, you're going to watch short videos. You don't have to dance necessarily, but you're going to want short videos. If you're working on YouTube, you might want longer form, perhaps. If you're going to drop clips into Facebook or X or something like that, then you're talking 15, 20 seconds. And so that's what you've got to do is to condense your point into that amount of time.
Yes.
So the key is really being able to deliver that message in no time at all. And I sometimes say to people, when I'm working on somebody with a speech, for example, I say, can you deliver that in 10 seconds, please? And they say, well, no, it's going to take me 45 minutes. And I say, well, I'm sorry. If you can, it's like a pitch for a film, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's a whole pitch now.
You go to Hollywood and you're going to pitch your movie. You've got to pitch it in a phrase. And that's, if it doesn't land in that phrase, you're never going to get any further conversation. So I think the different types of media, you've got to be able to work in slightly different ways, but the essence is the same. Get your information across, get your hook across very quickly, and make sure that there is some interest or benefit to whoever happens to be watching it.
Well, and then the art of sound bites.
Yes.
I work with people and they become stiff. They'll be having a great conversation, and then you can see the change in their face, the body, and they say their soundbite, and they go back to the other version. And it's a train wreck. So there's an art to doing these soundbite hooks, right?
There is, absolutely there is, and it's something that I train people on when I'm working with them, because you've got to be able to deliver the message without referring to the question. That's the real trick of it. So, and a lot of people fail to understand that. So when you're working with somebody, you've done this yourself, I'm sure. When you're working with somebody on a soundbite, you ask them a question and they'll say, yes, good question. The reason for that is this. And you say, no. You've got to pretend I didn't ask you a question. And it sometimes takes a while for them not to back refer, to just, and I say, I want you to just stand there and make a statement. Yeah. And eventually people get it. But the art of the soundbite is that. It's being able to deliver to an audience without any context at all, just straight out the bat.
And the media will grab clip, and they will use that. That when the president, when celebrities do it, it's the same clip on every network where they knew exactly where to drop it, and it works.
It does, and you can do it in a live interview too. So you can deliberately deliver a soundbite in a live interview, but the key to that is the edit point. You must leave an edit point. And I've seen some great answers ruined because the interviewee is talking over the last few words of the question. And you know what that's like. You can't get your digital scissors in there to find the edit point.
So how long to help a business person today? Because they're consuming TikTok, they are consuming YouTube, they're trying to learn on their own. And then they come to you and they go, Alan, I'm a mess. I've tried this, I tried this. How long does it take to unteach them the things they've learned, to teach them the right way to do this media speaking leadership world?
It's a good question. If I'm working one-to-one, I would say probably about 3 hours.
Wow.
Something like that. You could do it as quickly as that, because you're teaching some basic principles, several basic principles of communication. And you're working with bright people. They're going to pick it up quite quickly. On the other hand, some people are never going to get it. And that's the advice I sometimes have to give organizations. Say I'm working with a CEO, and I've spent a few hours with them, and they're not quite getting it. What I have to do is to go to somebody else. Maybe it's the CFO, or maybe it's somebody in human resources or whatever it is these days, and say, if you're going to have a spokesperson out there, you should make sure the CEO's busy and send whoever's really good at this. Because there are some people who just never seem to get it. But I'd say with 90% of people, you can do it in 3 hours.
In 3 hours. Wow. Because I've worked with some people, and you can see it. They're everywhere. They haven't even begun to crystallize who they are, the message they want to have. And this is keynote speakers as well.
Sure.
Because they can use the 15 minutes, the babble, and they'll eventually maybe give you some good stuff, but they don't know how to crystallize. So sometimes it's so hard to get them to get back on message and point. Do you find that to be true? That's one of the hardest struggles, to get them laser focused?
I do find that difficult to get some people to do. I think most people get it eventually, but I think it's different to a conversation. All right, we're having a conversation here, which is lovely, and I'm really enjoying it. It's great. But this is not really a media interview in that sense.
No.
So if one of, if we were on, 60 Minutes, if that's still going these days, I hope it is, then you've got to be a lot more tight. You've got to be more precise. You've got to be thinking, how is that keeping the audience interested? all the time. I know we're doing it because our audience is fascinated by this conversation. They're really loving it. And thank you very much for listening. But what it's about really is continually bringing it back to the point. Same in keynote speaking. You've got to continually bring it back to what I call the red thread. Whatever it is that's running through the middle of your speech, you've got to keep coming back to it. You've got to keep hanging on to that thread in the middle.
Well, and to that point, a lot of keynote speakers get tired of repeating themselves.
They do.
But to be a great keynote speaker, you have to be creative in how you repeat yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the art.
It is indeed. And because at the end of the day, if somebody's seen your speech and they report it to somebody else a week later, one of their friends they've met at a bar a week later, they've got to be able to summarize your message in a sentence or two.
Right.
And it's got to be the message that you intended them to deliver. You can only do that by repetition. That's the only way you can do it.
Now, with the overlapping of the media world with public speaking, there are some common areas that I think that can help both worlds. I talk about takeoff and landing. The beginning of your speech, the beginning of your interview, the landing, you want to have your call to action, whatever. Those are interchangeable on both sides of the mic and the camera lens, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do people understand the importance of having those nailed? Again, they want to be creative. They want to be spontaneous, but those are really pre-done things that the great guys know how to do.
They are. Well, they do if they work with me or you, obviously. So some other people not so likely. But yes, and when I'm working with a speaker or an interviewee, I always say, "What's the last line?" I generally start with the last line. Where are we going to end? What's the message you're going to leave people with right at the end? Same in an interview. What's your core message? What are you going to deliver? When they say, "I've just got one final question," I say you can almost ignore the question. If it's a live interview, just deliver your message. Right. That's what you want to do. And then, well, thank you very much. We haven't got time for any more. Great. I've done it. Done the job. So I start at the end. I decide what phrase they're going to use right at the end. And then we go back to the beginning, and you've got that kind of arc, haven't you, from the start to the end. How do we get from there to there? And the middle stuff just, almost looks after itself.
Well, I compare it to sports, and I used to be a gymnast. The idea of dismounting and sticking.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's no movement. You stuck it. The crowd goes wild. If that's what people on camera and mic and public speakers can learn to do, they will own the crowd much stronger.
That's cool, because I once wrote a blog called "Stick Your Dismount" about because I was working at the London Olympics and Paralympics in 2012, and in fact I work at quite a lot of sporting events as a volunteer, actually, because I love working the media crew as a volunteer. I love it. Watching. Sorry.
Call me over next time. I want to come play with you and do that.
You're very welcome. You'll be very welcome, Rich. Whenever I'm also a qualified London guide as well. So I show people, usually American friends around London. Anyway, but the thing is, it's all part of the same thing, isn't it? Because we're communicators. We love to tell stories, and we love to be able to explain things in the most effective way. Mm-hmm. That's what our jobs are about, and that's what we need to teach people.
Now, I saw reading up on you that you make virtual events more valuable than in-person events. Okay, now that's a bold statement, because I love the virtual world. So a lot of people are like, throw it away. We're done with the pandemic, all that stuff. But they don't understand the power of this. So help us understand it, please, Alan.
Well, the thing about the virtual world is that you can bring in a lot more resources than you can to a static event. I mean, static events, it's quite expensive if you're bringing people in, if you're bringing in equipment, if you're putting on demonstrations. Whereas if in a virtual event, you can do virtually anything.
Yes.
You can run graphics. You can bring in people from different parts of the world. You can have a debate between somebody in Africa and somebody in America. Yes. And that's all in real time. And I think the possibility of a virtual event is really exciting. For me, it's like a TV show.
Yeah,
it's like a live
and that's why I run
show.
mine too.
Yeah,
that's the only way to run them, I think.
Yeah, and there's so much more opportunity in a virtual event than in a static. I mean, I still have in-person events, of course, but these days with people not traveling so much and not wanting to take so much time, the virtual event it's a wonderful thing.
Well, plus now you have content.
Yeah.
Repurpose, keep the engine going for you. Before you had go someplace, do a studio, and maybe you got to pay to get the content back from the studio.
That's right.
Write off a little waiver that you're not going to do anything with it illegally. Now you have all this content that you can just keep growing your brand and your message.
You spot on, and we've all got the tech now. We're all in our home studios now. We can run fairly sophisticated shows from home.
Yes.
So we're supplying the venue as well. That's why I often say to people, never charge less for a virtual speech.
Now, I also found out, this one I really love to dig a little bit. You started an online community before Facebook.
I did.
Holy cow.
It was August the 4th, 1996. It was an online community. I worked at the time. I was a journalist working for what's called Consumers Association. It's the same as your Consumer Reports.
Okay.
Similar. So I was a consumer journalist, and we were asked if we could set up the internet was in its infancy. This is nearly 30 years ago, 29 years ago now. Although we started building it in 94. And we put together, we became what's called an internet service provider. So not only did we have the content, we also had the technology to deliver it. So we had servers, we had dial-up lines, would you believe? Remember the dial-up modem?
I remember the AOL little tone.
That's right.
Locked in, man. That little squeal.
You are connected at 9600 Bode. I mean, they were on the front of every magazine, but you couldn't get rid of these little discs. They were everywhere. So we used to do that. And then what we did, we set up online communities. The principle behind it was we set up what we called buying groups. So, for example, if somebody wanted to buy a car and they could find 10 other people who also wanted to buy the same car, we could negotiate group discounts. So we set up little forums. We set up friendship links, you could befriend somebody. And this was all in 1996. I keynoted the first conference on online communities in late 96 in Bristol in the UK. We didn't call it social media. We didn't know the term social media, but I did write a very early book on social media in 2007.
What was the response to that? Of come online, because I remember the chat boards. It was a chat board, and then eventually became an image board, and then we're streaming faces. But what was the initial reaction to let's build a community online?
People said it couldn't be done. They said no, people won't want to talk through their computers to each other, will they? No. Surely not. But we proved that it could. In fact, it was a paid-for community. We used to charge people what would be the equivalent of about $20 a month to be part of this community, and we had 100,000 members within a year. Wow! So we did well. We did well. I mean, it wasn't, and that, what was that, 4 or 5 years before Facebook? I can't remember. Whatever Facebook.
Well, how was your name not out there with everyone else? Come on, forget about Zuckerberg, everybody. You were the guy.
Well, yeah, but I was in paid employment, wasn't I? So.
So, the other interesting thing, and then we'll get back to our media stuff. I just find this fascinating when I learn about people and their back history.
Yeah.
Your great, 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 great grandmother aunt was Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, right?
That's right. My mother's name was Godwin. William Godwin was Mary Godwin's father. She married Percy Bysshe Shelley and became Shelley. And in fact, I do speeches about the Frankenstein myth, because people misunderstand. They think Frankenstein's the monster, and Frankenstein is the scientist who created the monster. The monster doesn't have a name.
Yes.
And in fact, she wrote it when she was 19, when she was at a house party in Switzerland with Shelley, Lord Byron, and a guy called John Polidori. It's a fascinating story. It really is. And I do little tours around London for people who are interested in that backstory. I did one last week, and we go to where Mary was born, where she met Shelley, the church where they were married, all that stuff. And I tell them the story about the creation of Frankenstein. It's very interesting. So I'm quite proud of that.
Is the rest of your family creative like you?
And yes, I've found musicians and newspaper editors in the 1800s. One of my ancestors was the editor of a newspaper in London. I thought I like that. That's a good connection. I'm having that.
See, from print to public speaking to radio, from TV.
That's right.
So let's get back to the reputation side. How we're perceived now, what we say online, radio, TV, everything now, you are the brand. I tell people you are the brand.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
People are wrestling with that because
Mm.
they want to sell the product.
Yeah.
But they don't want to be the brand, but they're glued together now. The know, like, and trust factor, all those things have changed it all.
So important.
How do
Yeah.
you help people to accept this is part of the new game? You have to embrace this now. You really have to.
Well, I give them examples. I talk about people like Richard Branson, for example, who doesn't actually own any company, but he's got an interest in an awful lot of companies. I do some work with under his company with Virgin, obviously, and somebody like that. I think Gordon Ramsay, the chef, who does has lent his name to lots of different things, and people have an interest in people. We know this, but they're interested in people. They're not really interested in a bit of kit in the same way. They can't feel the same way. Well, some people do. I mean, guitars, obviously, that's the thing you're looking for, but that's another story. But most people, they want to connect with people, and if they like the person, they're going to like the product. That's the way it works.
So how do you help people to get there? Because again, the coaching, the camera, the microphone, the distractions off camera, they lose the one-on-one attention to the camera lens so fast.
They do. What I talk to them about is the old newsreader trick of talking to one person all the time. And I always say, if ever you meet a newsreader, I mean, I've been on TV as a newsreader myself. If you meet a newsreader, ask them who they talk to, and it'll be one individual. In my case, I talk to my wife through the lens.
Yes.
So whenever I'm delivering piece to camera straight in, I'll be talking to Heather, and I know all sorts of people who are presenting to camera, and I always say, who do you talk to? They know what I mean, and they tell me the person they're talking to. Because there are two things there. One is it keeps you focused because you're talking to somebody you know and love, but it also keeps your language singular, and that's really important. I learned that when I was a radio journalist many years ago, when the first time I went into a classroom and learned about radio journalism back in the 70s, the instructor said, how many listeners do you hope to have? And I said, I know, 1 million. He said, 1. You have 1 listener. You only ever talk to 1 person, because then your language will be, have you ever done this? Yes. How many times have you thought about this? I bet you're thinking that, rather than how many of you have ever done this?
Hi,
hundreds of you out there.
You're all here.
And it's the same with public speaking. Same with speaking. Singular language all the time. If there's one key thing that I say to speakers, never address a group of people. Always address an individual, even if you're in front of a crowd of 1,000. It
self-multiplies. Yes. Everyone in the room thinks you're talking to them.
Yeah, that's right.
We must have had the same college professor in broadcasting. That was a very first time. Journalism 101 was the same kind of question. And no, you talk to one.
Well, I can tell you the person who taught me that. And he was a man who lived in America for many years, a man called Alistair Cook. And Alistair produced a program called Letter from America. He used to have a flat in Central Park. He was a journalist from Manchester originally. And for 52 years, he produced a 15-minute show every Saturday morning called Letter from America. And he was basically explaining America to us over here in Europe. And I met him a few times. I was at his flat in New York overlooking Central Park. And he gave me that tip. And he also said one other thing. He said, Alan, as a journalist, never miss a deadline, never waste a word. And those thoughts kind of echo every day in my head. Never miss a deadline, never waste a word.
When you look at the landscape today, I mean, you've come literally from pre-Facebook to everything we're going now. Did you ever imagine we'd be in a world like this, where literally we're doing TV, streaming TV together from UK to here, and it's evolving more and more? Did you ever imagine this?
Not for a second, Rich. Not for a second, because you can't. You can imagine possible futures, but you can't predict the future. And I feel for futurists. I know I'm sure you do too. We know some futurists. You think, well, lucky, you might get lucky, you might not. But no, of course I never realized that. And we're still developing. I mean, what was it? Last week we went to a virtual Titanic exhibition, for example, where you put on a VR headset and you go down with the submersible to the wreck of the Titanic. And you're walking around on the seabed, and then it animates into how it was before the Titanic went down. I tell you, I've been on the bridge of the Titanic heading for the iceberg last week, and it's so real that I almost thought, steer the ship. believe me, you can actually do that. You can get hold of the ship's wheel and do that, and it starts to turn as you do that. I don't know how they do that, but I would never believe that was possible years ago.
You've worked internationally on the public speaking side. Me and the National Speaker Association, other ones I've connected with, is there a tug of war between public speaking and forget the media camera? Is there a bit of a love-hate relationship of the cameras have invaded our territory now?
I think for some people, yes. And I think some people are sometimes great on stage and terrible on screen.
Yeah.
And that definitely happens. And you know this, sometimes when you put a camera in somebody's face, they become a different person.
The reality is the camera is always on you now.
Yeah.
And when you step on stage as a public speaker, there's usually a jumbotron.
That's
or
right.
maybe they're streaming it live to another part of the world. And
Sure,
these
absolutely.
interactive conversations are going on. So you have to embrace this new world we live in. It's not just public speaking. It is media speaking.
It is. And it's interesting you mentioned that, because obviously sometimes you can be on stage in front of a live audience and it's being live streamed at the same time.
Yes.
And then I say to people, you've got to imagine yourself doing a TV show in front of a live audience. Yes. So your mindset is, I'm the host of a TV show. I've got an audience in the studio and I've got an audience at home, and I have to satisfy both.
So which one do you talk to more?
Well, I talk more to the audience at home. I would tend to do that more at home than in, but you've still got to be aware. And sometimes if you get some cutaway shots that show there's an audience there, that's great, because that kind of helps the illusion, I suppose, in a way. But you really do have to satisfy both audiences. And then when you've got a big virtual event, that's what I'm always saying to the organizers. Remember, if there's dead time at home, you're going to lose the people. Yes. You won't know, but they'll have switched off. So you've got to keep both audiences engaged all the time.
Alan, Stephen, let me bring up your website. You have been a blast to talk with tonight. And again, here's your website. Everyone scan the QR code. But what are they going to find when they go? I mean, you got a lot of information on that website, man.
I do have a lot of information. I mean, obviously, it's about media. It's about speaking. There's a video vault on there. There's a bunch of things that they can look at to get some advice. All of which is free, of course. I'm one of these guys. I like to give away as much as possible. I always say, you give away your knowledge, you sell your expertise. And I think that's what we do as experts. We freely give away our knowledge. That's what we've been doing today. We've been sharing our knowledge with people. But if they wanted our expertise, thank you very much.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So check out the website. Learn a lot more about Alan. It's absolutely amazing. I want to see if you can crystallize as we land the plane here tonight.
Yeah.
What are the key features for a great reputation?
Key features for a great reputation: do what you say you're going to do. So always do what you say you're going to do. Under promise and over deliver. That's another key to it. Make sure that you delight people. Have moments of delight. And if you package all of that together, under promise, over deliver, do what you say you're going to do, have moments of delight, guarantee you'll have a stellar reputation.
Alan Stevens, great to have you on Rock the Stage. It took a little while to get you here, but we got you here.
Yeah, we're here. And I've really enjoyed it, Rich. Thank you for the opportunity. It's very, very kind of you.
Thank you, Alan. Wow, what a great conversation. Again, there's so much wisdom. You really do need to go check out his website, learn more about the income from the speaker side, going all the way back to pre-Facebook days. Come on. He's got history. He's got good stuff there. So make sure you go. Please check it out. And again, we do want to remind you, we are now proud to be on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and the Bravehearts Network. Please subscribe, add us to your channels, your favorite channels, and join us as we expand our reach more and more. Past episodes will be going up on those channels, and of course, current episodes as well. And of course, every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we kick off a new episode on YouTube. So join us for the live chat. Join us in the conversation with amazing conversations like this and much, much more. Thanks for being with us tonight on The Trigger, Rich Bontrager. Come back next week. And until then, keep on rocking.